Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name's Robin Koroluk, and I'm joined here with Jordan Wilson. Today we're going to chat with you a bit about the future of finance and evolving skill sets. So that's going to include the changing roles that we're likely going to see in the industry, changing skills, changing culture, and organizational context. We hope this ties into the other portions of the speaker series that we've done thus far: Diversity Matters, Careers for All, Careers in Finance, and even our hiring advice. Really just give you an idea of where the industry is going and how you can participate in the future of finance. So Jordan, why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Robin. And I think Robin's exactly right. If you look back to the other sessions that we did on Diversity Matters, on Careers for All, and Careers in Finance, hiring, you're going to see some common themes in what's happening now and going forward. And if you consider that in your education path and your soft skills, your complementary skills, that'll help you develop better career opportunities. So the first slide we're going to look at is the changing roles. So 89% of industry leaders believe that an individual's role in a job or a career is going to transform multiple times. You're not going to just go into the one job and do it for 20 years. You're going to have to adapt and grow. And because of that, lifelong learning becomes essential. So if you're going to go into a finance type career, expect to learn early, but to keep learning and adapting as the world changes. And that was kind of the second point, is that many investment professionals believe that the world will change in the next 5 to 10 years. And we look at our next section on the growth industries. You'll see exactly what I mean. The world is always changing. It's just incredible. And the final aspect, which sort of factors into this change, is the increase in artificial intelligence. That's the AI, and how humans interact with it. And right now, we're at a phase where the artificial intelligence is improving, but you still have the ethics, transparency, communication, empathy, tacit knowledge, trust. Those are human traits, human elements that the tech cannot reproduce yet. Maybe in 5 years we'll all be gone.
What are your true thoughts, Jordan, regarding the change to 100% artificial intelligence?
Well, if you look back, and again, when we get into the growth industries, we'll see a couple of examples. Mm-hmm. But if you talk to your parents or your grandparents, they would never believe self-driving cars.
Right.
My telephone gives me better photographs and video and music than anything I could have bought in the 1980s or 90s. The world is changing so much, but we're still at the point where they can't replicate that empathy, some of the true human skills. So I think you need that bridge. Mm-hmm. And we see that in finance, where you can do calculations and come up with asset allocations on a computer basis, mm-hmm. but there's still this soft skills, the hand holding of clients in bad times, looking at other factors that impact, especially fear, the riskiness of investments.
Yeah.
So it's hard to sort of right now program in these things. But in 20 years, we'll be driving Teslas on Mars. So who knows?
Yeah, I think the takeaway for sure would be just become open-minded to these changes. And like the whole purpose of what we're talking about today is to even just be able to evolve with these changes with your career.
That's exactly right. Is you can't be looking at today. You have to look out a few years And if you're sitting in a high school, you may not have that experience to look out. But talk to people. Otherwise, you'll end up walking around listening to a Sony Walkman and taking your photos with Kodak cameras.
Yeah.
And you won't be driving the self-driving cars that Elon Musk produces. So what else with changing roles do you see from your perspective, Robin?
Yeah, Jordan, I think there's lots that we're going to see. One being teams. Teams likely will dominate. You know, going from that star portfolio manager or that one-man team to team approach. I can even relate in my current role. You know, the industry looked a lot more like two people, one advisor, one associate. Now our team's up to 12 people. So that's just evolving day by day even, and I think that's the way the industry is going, and I think there's lots of finance jobs that are going that way.
But this is something that you and I talked about in Diversity Matters, building diverse teams that bring different skill sets.
Right.
Careers for all, where there's different jobs for different personalities, introverts, extroverts.
Exactly.
People that want to eat what they hunt, people that want more job security.
Exactly.
And you see that at your job, in your team, right?
Exactly, yeah. There's always the right fit and the right person that you can, we're always looking for different skill sets. So it's really just finding that right person that fits that skill set. And there's really a job for anyone. Obviously, we can only hire so many people, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I do know what you mean.
So yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
No, the other thing that you talked about a lot in the Diversity Matters section was the need for that balance between work and life.
Right.
And we talked about today now you're seeing more directors in accounting firms, more principals in law firms, because people don't want to just push to the top to become partner or they're gone. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the second point, is that work life. Right. So can you expand maybe a bit on that?
Yeah, I think right now with diversity particularly, a lot of women find it very hard to get into executive positions or even leadership roles. So, that's where we are trying to see more women in the finance industry get into it, more in those leadership roles, those board positions. And I think the change that's going to allow us to get to that place is seeing roles that have a little more work-life balance, that aren't requiring, a ton of travel or a lot of overtime, potentially a little bit more of that balance. And although we talk about on the female side, maybe largely due to them having the children, we are definitely seeing that on the male side as well, that they're looking also for this work-life balance. So I think diversity is going to become a lot.
No, and that was something we did discuss, and I brought that up in the diversity, was that they did this primarily initially for women because of that, starting a family and leaving the workforce for a period. But what companies have found is that men are now taking advantage of that because they put more value on a work-life balance.
That's right.
On career. And we'll touch on that sort of in the next slide or two. So
that's right. So with Asia Pacific growth continuing, as we've discussed, the world is definitely shrinking a bit, and we're going to see a lot more growth of finance in Asia. So even as well as India could be the world's investment hub. I think we're going to see a lot of changes happen in the finance world, and we're just going to see a lot more of that integration happen that we've already seen.
Yeah, I think just on sheer numbers alone, as Asia, India, and China, for example, are still considered developing nations. They're emerging markets, as it were. But they are the bulk of the world's population. And as their population grows and moves up to more of a developed level, economically that is, and there's more middle class and upper class, you are going to see a shift in finance away from, say, New York or London, England, into Asia. And that's what we talked about with foreign languages and understanding other cultures, because the globe is shrinking. And so is beneficial for people that can work closely and understand the nuances to different cultures, in this case, Asia.
So Jordan, why don't you share with us a little bit about the changing skills that we're potentially going to see in the finance industry on a go-forward basis?
Well, I think that's also an interesting one, and it sort of touches on what we just talked about, is that employees in recent polls in the finance world show that interesting work is actually the number one driver for their motivation, ahead of compensation. So they prefer having interesting work and learning new skills, new experiences, instead of just pay. So if I'm going to offer you $100,000 in salary to do menial work that's boring, employees turn their noses up at that. They'd rather take 80 or 90,000 and be doing something that's challenging, that excites them in the morning when they get up and come through the doors. So that was interesting. However, we're still at the point where the main reason for leaving is poor compensation, but it's closely followed by working on a bad team or having a bad boss. And again, we see that lack of interesting work. So if I'm going to lose a great employee, not because of money, but because I'm not giving them interesting work, then it's the incentive to me as the boss or the leader of the team or the head of the company to create challenging environments that do motivate them to come in the morning and give it 100%.
Absolutely.
And then I think the second area is that soft skills are key. Gee, we talked about this in especially the hiring segment, but we sort of covered that in other areas. Diversity, understanding cultures. So a lot of the soft skills, the empathy, how to work in teams, those sort of things are crucial at all phases of your career. And your focus initially is going to be more technical when you come out, but you want to start developing your soft skills, your communication skills, your presentation skills, all those sort of things.
And lots of times that takes a little more experience to build up those soft skills, because it is stuff that you learn through repetition and experience.
Exactly, and confidence.
That's
the
right.
more practice and the more experience you develop in presenting, and you won't get that from us two speaking on this, but that is something. The more times you present in front of crowds, the better you tend to be at it. So that's sort of one of the things. And the other area on this slide is what they call T-shaped skills. And T-shaped skills are kind of skills that work across all the disciplines. So you have a hard skill set, but there's so much more that you have to focus on, like if you want to succeed. And part of that is being systems savvy. So having some IT skills goes back to the artificial intelligence merging with humans. Understanding larger organizational context. Having situational fluency and adaptability. Cultivating a valuable network of clients and contacts. And understanding and leveraging diverse perspectives. So again, a lot of this is the softer skills. So you may have the technical finance skills, but you also need complementary hard skills and the soft skills. And that is hugely in demand by companies. In fact, when companies look at the most important future skill categories, by far, these T-shaped skills dominate. And then it's leadership, the pure soft skills, and last on the major points, but fourth, is the technical side. So the technical side is always of less importance than these other skills as we move into the future that we're facing now. So Robin, if we're talking more about the changing skills, what are some of the things that they should focus on?
Absolutely. Some of the most important skills that we come across that we're looking for is problem solving or solutions, creativity and innovation, the ability to really articulate a mission, and situational adaptability, such as the T-shaped skills that Jordan just listed. Some of those creativity innovation skills create the ability to connect across disciplines, and solution skills are the most difficult to find. So do you mind elaborating on that a little bit, Jordan?
Well, again, this is something we discussed in the hiring, and it's, I want to hire solutions-oriented people. And I think I said in one of the sessions, I don't want my employee coming to me, the world is falling. I want the person coming, the world is falling, but here's what I think we could do to make it better.
Right.
So you want people that bring solutions, creativity, innovation. These are the sort of skills that are imperative that I want to hire in people. So if you're out there in an interview or on your resume, you want to demonstrate that you're a can-do type person. And whether that be delivering flyers or newspapers, working in a bakery in the summer, there's all sorts of things that just says, I can help you solve your problems.
Absolutely. And I think that next point kind of draws on that as well, the time spent on the job learning. You are going to focus your time learning new skills. The research that's been done for CFA candidates, they spend 38% of their time learning new skills. That's a lot of time, but obviously they're just a sponge and they're soaking everything up. CFAs that are more experienced spend about 25% of their time learning on the job.
And I think that tells you kind of two things. Is one, it goes back to our earlier point that you have to be adaptable throughout your career. It also goes to the point that employees are motivated by interesting work. And for most people, interesting work is new work, challenging work, not just the same old, same old. And the final point is that it doesn't matter if you're just learning to become a finance professional or you've been in the industry for 20 years, there's still a heavy component of your day to keep current. Because again, there were no iPhones 20 years ago. There was no Teslas 20 years ago. So the world keeps changing, and if you want to be able to advise people on what's happening today, you have to stay current. And as a CFA, a large part of my annual continuing education is refresher readings on how things have changed. Mm-hmm. And then I guess the final point, again, this goes to a lot of what you talked about, Robin, and diversity and careers for all, is things like mentoring programs, finding people that you can get information on, much like we're doing here today, the defining of, a roadmap, that definitive career path as opposed to the nebulous one.
Yes.
So maybe you can talk on those points a bit.
Yeah, the lack of uncertainty that is assumed with finance, I think, is something we're trying to change. We're trying to educate individuals such as yourselves, potentially looking at a career in finance and providing you with the multiple roads that you could follow and what that could look like. Again, there is a lot of flexibility with finance, but that is something that we can, of course, mentor you on. Reaching out to that right person, you need to make that connection, because lots of times you're not going to really know the right answer, and even someone like your role model in your life, your parent, they might not know either. So it's important to be well connected with the people that do know that. And then diversity, we need to have the right people in the right roles, and that's really what that comes down to. So changing cultures and organizational context. As the slide alludes to here, a world of work is changing. 77% of leaders expect work world to significantly change. So pre-COVID, the change already was happening to work from home, and we're definitely seeing a lot more of that. And until this pandemic is over, I think we're yet to see what this actually shakes out to, but I can see a lot of companies making that a permanent change. Do you suggest that is going to be the case as well, Jordan?
I do, and I think it's not overly COVID related, because if we looked at what motivates employees, it's less the compensation, it's more their experience. It's the juice bar, it's the gym in-house, it's having my own space, not being stuck in a cubicle like a hamster looking over the side and staring at his buddies. So that's what's motivating employees today. And if you want to hire strong, talented staff, then I give that to you, or you go across the street to a competitor. So
focusing on that overall employee experience really is a key for these companies.
That is so
true.
true.
To retain the employees.
And the other thing was, we talked about employees want to learn new skills, learn new things. So again, that's managing the employee experience. Firms are investing more in training programs. And that's important, because it's important to the company, but it's also important to the employee.
Right. So workplace design, enabler of culture. That's really what that comes down to.
Exactly.
So what are companies doing? Technology. Technology is a big thing. I know where I work today, we invest millions of dollars every year to keep up with the technology. We're definitely not on the breaking edge of it. So I think you can maybe discuss that a little more, Jordan.
Yeah, I think there's two components to that. Is you have to be current, in large part because it tends to be cost effective. Doing things electronically or over the computer or through IT systems can save you money, which increases your bottom line or helps profitability. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that that's just the way the world is going. So regardless of the cost savings, you need to adapt. And as part of that, the older employees may not be as computer literate or IT savvy, but the young people that are coming out of high school and college now, this is their life. If I'm sitting in this high school class listening to this, I probably don't know anything before iPhones, before Google, before Amazon. That's just that. There was a whole era before that. Now everyone knows those IT skills. So they expect it built into their corporate experience and their employee experience. And that gets back to that AI human interaction. And that's what companies need to do. And again, that sort of gets into the training, is we have to train people as the technology continues to train. And what that does is it creates stronger employees.
Exactly.
And we just talked about how that motivates them. But it also helps your business. You get better client engagement. You retain staff. If I'm not bored, I'm going to stay with the company.
Yeah.
And what Rob and I were just talking about before we started this is creating a strong bench. Is I need to have junior employees that can move up, either on merit, or if Robin's working for me as a senior wealth advisor and she quits, I need someone that can step into her place. So you want to train staff so that they can, if they're your B team now, they're able to step up when your star quarterback falls, they can step in and your team can still go forward.
Exactly. Well, I hope you all took something away from today. We of course would like to thank our corporate sponsors. Things like this take a lot of time and energy and a lot of resources, and without them we would not be able to deliver anything like this to you. So we just want to thank them for their overall patronage to us. Take care. Hi.